Thanks everyone for coming, first of all. Hopefully I'll keep it light and entertaining. I'll try to save some time at the end for any questions either about the content that's gone through here or just questions you have about 6 Waves or social gaming in general. So the main topic that we're going to be covering today is getting big on Facebook, growth strategies, and gameplay mechanics that move the needle. I think we're kind of, at 6 Waves, we're uniquely situated to see a wide portfolio of games and the mechanics that work within those games to acquire, retain, monetize users, as well as generally, what are some of the strategies, the methods you can grow your games on Facebook. So a little bit about 6 Waves first. Right now, we're the largest publisher of independent social games on Facebook. We have an established network of around 30 million users across 25 games on Facebook. We're also on Mixi and Yabage in Japan. And we provide a couple of critical services to help independent developers really grow and profit from their games. The key ones being distribution and marketing. We have our network size of 30 million that we cross-promote over. We also spend thousands per day on the various titles in our portfolio to drive users directly to those games. Localization, we localize into a minimum of 3 or 4 or 5 different languages, sometimes up to as many as 9 or 10. Hosting, we host through Amazon and SoftLayer, basically aggregating all of our partners' accounts under one. Game advisory, we have a PM team of around 9 or 10 folks. These are the guys who are on the front lines working with all our existing partners. So they have a pretty good read on what are the features that will drive user acquisition, retention, monetization, so forth. And all of that, we gather that feedback for our developer partners and help them tweak and tune the game. And then finally, as some of you may have heard, yesterday we announced the merger with Lull Labs, who's the developer of Ravenwood Fair. And so from that partnership, there's actually a lot that we can add to our portfolio that we'll provide to developers. One of the main things being the FlySo game engine. So there's the Flash isometric game engine. It's the engine behind Ravenwood Fair. Super efficient, super easy to build on top of. That's one of the services that we'll be providing as part of our overall publishing deal. In terms of our network size, at this point, we're one of the largest game player networks on Facebook. You combine it together, it's around 30 million plus monthly active users, which puts us right there with Playdom, Playfish, and depending on what day you check, above or below them. Zynga still, definitely by far and away the largest player, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So within our portfolio of games, at any given time, we have 5, 6, 7 games that are above 1 million MAU. Throughout the history of our published portfolio, there's 11, 12, 13 games that we've managed to push above 1 million MAU at some point. Some of the games, you take a look at Ravenwood Fair, Mall World, they've been at 5, 6, 7 million MAU. And then finally, in terms of our user base, it's pretty geographically diverse, around 1/3 North America, 1/3 Europe, 1/3 Asia. And this is not only for our user base, but also in terms of the partners we work with. So we're constantly on the lookout for high quality developers to partner with us to grow, and right now they're scattered all over the world also. So specific to today's talk, there are a couple of topics I want to cover. One is the importance of getting to scale very quickly. Also methods of growth, and then finally mechanics that move the needle based on the games that we've seen in our portfolio. We'll show a couple of metrics, we'll show a couple of features that, some of them will be intuitive, but others interesting to check out. So in terms of the benefits of being big, I think everyone kind of knows, all right, if I'm going to get a game on Facebook, of course being bigger is better. There's clear benefits in terms of the revenue funnel, so the more users you're able to pump in at the top, the more of them will retain, more of them will convert to paying users, and ultimately, you get a couple of whales in there, you get a couple of people paying 1 Facebook credit, 2 Facebook credit, and you get dollars coming out at the bottom. The more users you send at the top, the more money you get at the bottom. Other things that benefit, operational cash flow. So you want to pay your dev teams. If you're going to do some marketing on the side, you need to be able to do that. Hosting, serving costs for some of these games can get to thousands of dollars per month. From a PR perspective, it's great to be able to say, I have a game that's multiple million MAU. There's tons of people playing it every single month. There's X number of people returning. And then finally, related to that is, of course, raising funding or getting acquired. Depending on which strategy you want to go out with. The bigger your game is, the more buzz you're going to get, the easier it is for you to do one of these things. I think one thing that's not as, commonly known or generally accepted is the importance of getting to scale. So it's not necessarily about first to market, it's about being the first to scale. And so you see this across a lot of games on Facebook right now, where you have a super creative developer who's able to come out with a great game idea, and let's say 2, 3, 4 months down the line, you have one of the larger players either cloning the game or coming out with that exact game, but adding a few gameplay dynamics that make it slightly different. And the unfortunate thing is that it really is about the player who's able to get to scale first. If you're able to get to 1 million plus MAU, a couple million plus MAU, you're really going to drown out the innovative developer who built that core game in the first place. So a key example, someone a little bit older, is Farmville and Farmtown. And granted, you can argue where the farming idea came from in the first place, but essentially on Facebook, Farmtown definitely came out earlier. You can just look at the charts, but because they weren't able to drive users into the game as fast as Zynga was, and Farmville, maybe at this point it's significantly different, but early on, pretty comparable. They were able to take that market share and really gain the lead. Same thing with a couple of games in our portfolio. We published Mall World and Kings of Camelot. And when those games first came out, when we first partnered with them, people were somewhat hesitant. Is a game like Kingdoms of Camelot going to work on Facebook? It's a lot more of a casual audience. Same thing with Mall World. Is a game that's specifically targeting women going to be successful on Facebook? We partnered with them early on, pumped in millions of users, and even now, there's definitely clones of those two games. And some people would argue better games than those two games. But they were able to jump out to the head start and hold on to those users. Of course, you do need to constantly iterate, provide new content to those games. But it's important to take that first step before others do. And nowadays, you don't get as much cloning as you did 6 months, a year before. But definitely, you have multiple publishers, multiple developers coming out with comparable games. So the latest wave seems to be kind of the Army-ish game. And you have a lot of top players coming out with comparable games. And you can see that, even, let's say, like a publisher like Zynga, they're definitely the behemoth in the space. They're able to come in with their game and basically blow everyone else out of the water. And so you want to be sure that you push your game hard at the beginning so that hopefully you're kind of sucking out some of those users before others get to them. There's also less obvious, but also significant and measurable impacts to accelerated growth versus a slow burn. So if you just kind of think about it logically, a game where you're driving a lot of users in at the beginning, those people are going to be playing, they're going to be posting feeds, they're going to be sending out requests, sending out invites. As long as you have some friends that are playing these games, you're going to be peppered from multiple directions from these games if a lot of people are playing at the same time. If, let's say, you're breaking it out and it's like, we'll spend a little bit up front and a little bit more, ultimately, a lot of your friends might touch that game, but if they're not touching that game at around the same time, you're not going to be peppered by them for these messages. And what we see for some of our games is there's up to a 30 or 40% increase in whether it's playtime, retention, or monetization when we push heavily on one game that wasn't pushed as hard before. So in terms of growing fast, what are the ways that you can be first to scale? I think a lot of this is going to be common knowledge to most of you guys, but I'm just going to go through it and maybe you guys can ask some questions or see something new. Marketing spend, cross-promotion, localization, and brands. These are 4 big channels that, purely from the marketing side, our distribution side, that 6 Waves can help with, and also are pretty important for any independent developer also. And of course, at the end of the day, you need to build a great game. That's something that we can help with in terms of game advisory, but really that's something that the developers need to build a core team that really is passionate about building games. They understand the social gaming space and can focus on features that drive virality, retention, monetization, and have an incredibly fun game mechanic at the center of it all at the end of the day. So in terms of marketing spend, marketing spend, I'm talking about ads on Facebook. It could be through some ad networks, through partners such as AdParlor who buy the ads for you. It's definitely effective. I think no one's going to argue with that, but it's definitely pricey also, and getting increasingly so. So I gave, to see those numbers up there, I don't know if they're too small, but I gave a variant of this talk in October 2010, and I pulled down, this is from Social Bakers, kind of their rough estimates. And I think maybe they actually go into the Facebook ad API to pull some pricing as to what the average CPC is for various territories. And you can see while the rankings have changed a little bit, some of the top countries are still there. The US has moved from 61 cents to $1.14. Norway has moved from 53 cents to $1.60. So even within the span of these 9 months, a lot of the CPCs have doubled, if not more. And so really, for you to accelerate your growth, you really do need to be willing to spend, and potentially spend upfront at a loss in order to boost that game and give it a good start right from the beginning. The way you want to figure out, generally the way you want to figure out how much to spend is you look at the LTV for your game, and you're willing to spend up to that. Unless you want, you can spend under that to maintain some healthy profit margin, adding in virality, so forth. But calculating LTV is definitely a challenge. I think even for someone like us who sees a lot of different games, it's still a challenge. So especially a week in, 2 weeks in, how do you calculate what the LTV of that game is? How do you know how much you're able to spend? Another one is cross-promotion, click exchanges. So cross-promotion is targeted, it's highly cost-efficient, but it requires unfettered access to a portfolio of titles and users. So you'll see these bars across all the major publishers and for the developers because they're able to access click exchanges like Amplifier, AppStrip, and so forth. And as I mentioned, it's definitely an efficient way to tap into these gamers. These bars are sitting above games. People who are clicking on them are already pre-qualified because they're playing a game already. They're familiar with the gameplay dynamics of free-to-play. They're playing through these things. They know that you can pay to receive a boost or some accelerant. And these are the users that are willing to play these games and are pre-qualified. I think the one caveat, I think click exchanges are great. I think it's a great opportunity to open up the game to more people. The one caveat there is that it is somewhat bounded by the size of the game joining the exchange. So if you're a huge game and you join a click exchange, it's going to be one-to-one, and you'll benefit with a flow of users coming out. If you're coming into it and you're a small game, there's still going to be some benefit there, definitely, but I think you need to be realistic with how many clicks you're going to be able to get out given the size of your game. And then there's localization. So localization is definitely a growth accelerator that's increasingly now less overlooked. So 6 months, 9 months ago, it was largely overlooked. There were very few publishers, developers who were doing localization. We started out very early on, Chinese, French, Spanish, and I think at this point, most of the larger publishers are launching out with localized games right from the outset. And I think that's because it opens up the game to a significant larger user base than just an English game. Of course, English is the largest language on Facebook. It's the default language of social games. And this is kind of where Facebook started. But there are a lot of international users, especially in Asia, in Latin America, in Europe, who either they're unable or unwilling to play games in English. And you do have a lot of developers now that are focused on specific territories. And so if they're able to build a culturally relevant, language relevant game, for a game that's only in English, you can see why, all else being equal, they'd prefer to play a game that they feel a lot more comfortable in. And you'll see increases not only to the pool of users you have access to, but also retention, monetization, play rates, so forth. And finally, there's brands and IP. So brands and IP, it's definitely a benefit and accelerant to the growth of a game. They have their built-in user base, and they also discount the cost of additional user acquisition. And of course, you have to find a brand that makes sense to build a game on Facebook. But I think a lot of the players out there have built games that do leverage these brands effectively and build games that by themselves are fun. So you look at CSI Crime City, Madden Superstars. Within our network, we have both Spartacus, the game based on the Stars TV show, as well as Camelot, based on Camelot TV show. And all of those games, while they do leverage the brand, they were able to send in a boost of users from the official fan pages, affiliated groups, and some off-Facebook advertising. All these games fundamentally are pretty fun games to play. And so once you have that kind of baseline, it's a fun game, then having that brand on top really does lower your cost of user acquisition. Because once you start advertising, like when we advertised Spartacus, there were definitely Spartacus fans out there, and so it increases your click-through rate on the ad, which therefore, the CPCs, the CPIs that you have to pay can sometimes be significantly reduced versus an original IP game. That said, again, all of it is dependent on having a great game. If you don't have a quality game that retains users, that monetizes users, all of the previous is going to be for naught, because you're going to drive in these users and they're just going to either bounce off or play for a couple of days, or they could potentially keep playing and just never pay. None of those scenarios are good scenarios. So what are the kind of features that you'd want to add into a game to make sure that it does retain, acquire, and monetize users? And the caveat here being, you do need that great gameplay experience. What I'm going to talk about here are things that you want to layer on to make the game more social, but fundamentally the developer needs to have kind of the creative spark to come up with a game concept that is going to be differentiated and that users are going to want to engage with. So in terms of retention, one thing that you'll see almost every single game do now in some form is a daily login bonus. There's an exclusive item for returning daily that'll help improve retention. So the example here is Mystery Manor. Developers, Game Insights, one of the developers that we partner with. And the example that they had for the daily login bonus was an item where you could only get it if you logged in 5 days in a row. And then you would get one smaller item, and if you got 4 of these items, you got this huge red cup. And so essentially, it really encourages players to come back to the game several days in a row, 4 or 5 days in a row. And if you break it at that point, you're still incentivized to come back. So it's not like a very harsh penalty where you have to come back 20 days in a row in order to get it. But this is an item that's also exclusive to the daily bonus. It's not something that you can buy in-game or earn somehow. Another example is within Spartacus. So the developers, Large Animal Games, were kind of co-publishing with Stars. In this scenario, they had a daily login bonus where it's kind of an accelerated growth curve for the coins that you could get. Denarii, which is the virtual currency in the game. Every day you come back, you get a little bit more. Day 5, you get, kind of accelerates up. And in terms of the impact, once they added that in and messaged it, we definitely saw an increase to the play rates. Because the rewards are getting incrementally better, people are incentivized to come back day after day. So the manner in which the daily bonus is implemented matters also. So one example that's kind of a thing that was fixed is Sunny Beach by @Play. When they first instituted the daily bonus, it was basically you log in every single day, you get a set number of coins, and these are the coins that you could earn in-game. And so kind of from the player's perspective, it actually wasn't that much different from what I'm getting in the game. And so in terms of the boost that we saw, it wasn't that significant. They went back to the drawing board, and what they came back with was a daily bonus that provided a randomized exclusive item. Two great things about this. One is it's not something that players can normally get in the game, and also there's kind of a mini game part of it because you're getting it's a random draw. And based on this implementation, we did see, I didn't put the numbers in there, but we did see a 20% increase in the play rate once this went in. Another feature that improves retention is single-player achievements. So achievements really do enable the rewarding of desired behavior as a game within a game. So some of these games, you can kind of plot out the storyline and specific quests, and you can just kind of guide people along. But for a game like poker, where the key point of the game is to play with other people, there might not necessarily be kind of reasons for people to come back over and over again. So building in an achievement system there really allowed us and the developer to provide the player with mini goals to work their way up aside from just kind of the core gameplay mechanic of playing poker. And there definitely was an increase here also. On the monetization front, I think across most of the games now, you'll see that players are willing to pay for accelerated progress in games that they are enjoying. Key thing here being games that are enjoying. If it's a fun game and there's things that they can pay to progress faster, they are willing to do it. I think early on, a lot of developers were reluctant to provide users the ability to essentially buy their way past their competitors. But I think at this point, most of the players on Facebook are relatively comfortable with this as long as it's not a vastly skewing system. And so within Spartacus, there's ways that you can train up your gladiators, various stats, vitality, bronze, speed, and you can choose to speed up those training systems. It didn't launch with this system, but once it did go in, we definitely saw significant increases in daily revenue, pay rate, and ARPU. And a lot of times, you want to have a good mix of high-priced items and, let's say, things that are 1 or 2 Facebook credits. What this really allows you to do is effectively price discriminate to the users. So the ones who are highly engaged with the game, they want to max out their stats as soon as possible, they're the ones who are going to buy the best things. But for the people who just want to, let's say, stay competitive with their friends, and they want to buy things for 1 or 2 Facebook credits to receive a temporary boost, they're able to do that also. Themed items and messaging. So definitely for a lot of the big games that do have, I don't want to say larger dev teams, but more focus in that area, there's a constant flow of themed items, seasonal items that will provide regular boosts to revenue as well as engaging customers. So whether it's holiday content, depending on your locale, or just regular content updates. These are the things that will provide your regular spikes in monetization. When new content comes out, when a new storyline comes out, people will see, I need to get some of this new content. I want to decorate my island some other way. And another thing to call out here is that the developer here messaged that there was new content a couple of days after the content actually went in. I don't know whether this was intentional, but the interesting thing is we actually did see 2 boosts of monetization. So one was when the content itself went in. So the users who were already engaged in the game, they went to the game that day, they saw this new content, and monetization went up. The other one was when we actually messaged it on the fan page. So the key difference there being, for people who aren't going back to the game every single day, if, let's say, they've liked the app previously, when you post to the fan page, it'll post on their stream also. And so some of those people must have seen that message even though they weren't actively playing the game either the past couple of days. They went back into the game and we saw another spike in monetization. Another tip, item placement. So definitely highlight the appealing items for sale, the ones that you think that users are most likely to buy and engage in, you want to put front and center. One of the games, Birdland, I don't know how many of you played it, but essentially you're raising multiple cages of birds. The most interesting thing in this game is definitely the birds themselves. You can breed the birds, you can move around the different cages, there's lots of different kinds. The first implementation of their items, they had a couple of decorations, and the fire eagle was at the bottom. There was some boost in monetization, but they wanted to try, what if we just had the fire eagle take up the whole screen? It's a pop-up that showed to everyone, and there's definitely an increase in monetization after that. So the items that you think users are most likely to engage with, you definitely want to make sure to draw attention to those. And that's a matter of kind of trial and error, figuring out what are the items that ideally you have some analytics hooked up so you can see exactly which items are selling, which ones you want to iterate on, which ones you want to frequently update. And those are the ones that, again, you want to put front and center when new content comes in. From the virality standpoint, you see that Zynga doing this in some of those games. Time-limited offers that require friend participation are a successful way to drive users to engage with their friends. So My Fishbowl, which was a game that we worked with Happy Elements on, this was a relatively mature game. This is one of the first, let's say, Fishbowl games on Facebook, definitely the first one out in Asia. And they had a feature where in order to get a unique fish, you needed to pull in requests from your friends, a certain number of friends within a certain time frame. And this really spurred people who wanted this fish to go out and, I don't want to say spam, but pull in as many of their friends and engage, even ones that didn't engage. And I think this was actually surprising how large an impact it had in terms of the DAU of the game. So for most mature games, you see a huge spike at the beginning and then a gradual decline. If you make another marketing push down the line, you might see surges, but generally, you don't frequently see huge spikes like this to DAU based on one feature. So it's actually pretty surprising, but it kind of reinforces that you do want to continually update your game with key features, see what else is successful out there in terms of other developers, and try to implement them into your game. And again, the importance of new content helps not just retention, but also virality if the game is hooked up that way. So within Ravenwood Fair, they're actually pretty good and pretty aggressive in terms of updating the content, not just seasonal, but also storyline related. And for a lot of the items in the fair, you need to collect a certain number of items. Either you can kind of mine or chop wood, or you can just ask your friends for it. And so when the mechanic is implemented in this manner, and you need to invite your friends, you need to post to your streams, requests sent and accepted increase, definitely increases the virality of the game even later on. I mean, you'll see regular bumps in their stats because they are updating this content. And that's it.